Hi, Yinnies, and welcome back to a Yin Yoga podcast. If you're new around here, welcome. Thanks for stopping by. For those of you that are return listeners, welcome back, friends. So today's topic is one that I had on my list. I keep a little list, in the magic iPhone of podcast ideas. When I see questions or when you guys reach out, whether it be on Instagram or wherever, and you send me some questions, I keep a little list of podcast episodes that I need to record in my phone. So this one's been on the list for a little while based on something I saw in the Facebook group, a Yin Yoga Network. And if you're a Yin fan and you are on Facebook and you are not a member yet of a Yin Yoga Network, you need to get in there. That's where the Yin party is. Just make sure you answer all of the admittance questions, otherwise you won't get let in. I'm now at this point, at the time of this recording, I'm one of the 4 admins of that group. It's not my group. I just pitch in where I can because I love the group and I was always interacting in the group. And so there we go. So anyways, I had seen this come up in that Yin group and thought, ooh, let's add that to the list. And then it just came up for me personally in my class not even a week ago. So today's topic is, what do we do when someone walks out of the class? What do we do when a student gets up off their mat and leaves the room and leaves your class? What do we do with that? So that's what we're going to talk about today. But before we do, y'all, my heart is like, you know how if you can do like an emoji heart, but then it's like animated and all the little hearts keep coming out of it? That's what's happening right now. Because in a Yin Yoga Network, somebody who I have not met before, but apparently listens to the pod, her name is Amanda Parr. Shout out Amanda, posted this in the group. I just want to give a shout out to Nick Danu. I have never met her, but I've been listening to her podcast now for the past few months. As a fellow Yin geek, I really enjoy the deep dives into different Yin topics that are concise and easy to listen to. All the best to you, Nick. Keep them coming. Okay, first of all, totally unsolicited praise. Thank you, Amanda. And that's exactly what I hope the podcast will do. So, yay. But then what ensued afterwards in the thread is where so there's the big heart, for Amanda's comment, and then all the little cartoon hearts that come off of that are from the people that commented afterwards. Nicola Bell said, it's like a continuing education course, eh? So much goodness. Sherry Catchpole said, well said. I got a heart from Dorothy. Rayanne Hatfield said, I've never met her either, but I love her podcast too. So much usable information shared. Thanks, Nick. Amy Newfield Klein said, my favorite yoga podcast by far. I always hear something new. Eleanor said, Eleanor, is it Deinson? I'm not sure if I'm saying your name right. A really good podcast. Linda said, I love how clear you are. The information is spot on. This is where I finally got a notified that someone had tagged me and chimed in. And then Keisha said she really enjoyed the recent episode with Bernie, and thank you. Angie Evans says she's an amazing resource for Yin teacher, and I love her podcast. Christina said she agreed. And then this is where I piped in and said, y'all are making me blush, and I'm still blushing. Heather Lincoln said, I agree, love her podcast, can't wait to take her teacher training. Trini Blair said, love this. We got clapping emojis. Jennifer says, agrees with all the accolades, learning so much from me and my podcasts. Rach agreed. Fellow Canadian living in Australia, loves hearing the Canadian accent. Well, you're welcome. I won't even try to do an Australian accent because that would be abysmal. And expressions, but the content is helpful and well presented. Yay for Yin nerds. Thank you, Nick. Yay for Yin nerds. And then Tracy, who is a graduate of my program. Nick is a wonderful person. I appreciate her insight and knowledge. And then I've got Amy Lee said ditto. Nick is my favorite yoga podcaster too. I do a little happy dance when new episodes drop. Listening all the way from South Africa. Hello, Amy in South Africa. And then I posted again a big thank you emoji. Louise said she literally couldn't agree more, adores Yin, and the podcasts have been so informative, loves the down-to-earth style, and the knowledge is amazing. Trying to convince her family next holiday needs to be in Canada so she can experience my classes. To which I said, I have Zoom classes. And y'all, any of y'all listening, provided that I even remotely work in your time zone, which I don't for everybody, but if I do, please, I got Zoom classes. There's a link in the show notes. They are registered semesters, not drop in. But if you'd like a season of Yin with me, I'd love to have you join me. It's so cool having people from like all over the world. Jenny Wright, fellow graduate again of my program. Yes, I had the good fortune to train with her, and she's exactly the same in person. Well, online in person, since we were on Zoom, as on the podcast. I love her podcast too. It's like continuing education credits and inspiration. First yoga training I completed and felt confident to both teach and practice. Loves Nick. Oh, thank you. And here's another graduate that chimed in. Y'all, I did not pay these people. This is the best kind of press ever. Erin Greaves, she's amazing. I followed her for a long time. And then I too was excited when the podcast came out. So much extra knowledge and reaffirmation moments every time I listen. I was able to take her Yin training last fall and highly recommend it for anyone who is looking for training or to deepen their knowledge. And then Lisa says, yes, thank you, Nick Danu. Marilyn Nelson, agree. And then there's people that are like, oh, wait, I better listen. Where can I listen? And then Missy Swim Fins, who I know by another name, but that shall stay secret, who has also taken my training. So happy to have a true passionate professional guiding our way in the Yin world. Nick Danu is the best. And if you're considering doing her training, do it. What you glean in her trainings will set you apart. Students will recognize and appreciate the depth of your knowledge that makes your classes rich and wonderful. And then Claire, my friend Claire, couldn't agree more. She's top notch. I don't know how to say this. I don't think this is your name. I think it might be your business name. Lystrup Yoga? She said, Nick is the best. Love her podcast, her sense of humor and passion for Yin, the queen of Yin yoga. Thank you. Although I would prefer Empress. And then Jackie says she's really enjoyed listening to the podcast. So, okay, thank you for humoring me. That was long. But, that was so sweet. Thank you, Amanda. Not only did you share your gratitude with me, but you gave other people an opportunity to, share their insights about the podcast and their gratitude for it. And, people who were like, what? Wait, what? There's a Yin podcast? What? There's a Yin yoga podcast to be able to check it out. So thank you so much, Amanda. I was getting all verklempt as I was reading them, or leaky, as my bestie calls it. So that's the podcast love that I'll share for today. I just want to let those of you that might be on YouTube, that once again, a few months ago, I probably mentioned I got kittens. And although they're more teenagers than babies right now, my littlest one is like a ninja. She's very hyper, but she also is all about mommy until daddy's home, of course. Then she's all about daddy. But anyway, she really does love a lot of attention and cuddles. And so she is sort of on my lap right now with a blanket, but also having a lot of trouble settling in because she's really hyper. So if you suddenly see me randomly lifting up a cat or pulling kitten nails out of my legs or flinching or moving, if you're on YouTube, that would be why. All right. She does make some cameos occasionally. Okay, my friends, if you have not offered a review for the podcast, here's what you want to. If you've been loving the podcast, if you've been getting a lot from it, I would be honored if you would offer me some review love. If you're listening on Apple, you can give it 5 stars and or both. You can also leave a written review. Let me know kind of what your takeaways are from the podcast, if it's been helpful for you. If you're on Spotify, you can do stars, but you can also now leave comments under the episodes, which is super cool. And if you're on YouTube, you can comment below. Give this a like, a thumbs up, make sure you're subscribed and give it a like. And also those of you that are perhaps listening on Apple or Spotify, make sure you're following the show so you don't miss episodes. All right, that's enough of that business. Let's talk about what do we do when someone walks out of your classroom? I remember very clearly, story time first, kids, because I think stories illustrate so much. I remember very, very clearly the first time somebody walked out of my classroom. I was teaching at it's like a technical college, like for trades and stuff. And they had a fitness program there. And so I was teaching a class, and it was I think it was a sample class because the registered series was about to start the next week. And this was like their week of like sample classes, which I still got paid for. It's just that people could come and try the class. And there was a gentleman, an older gentleman that came in, not senior citizen, just older than me at the time. And as everybody came in, I just went up and said hello and welcomed them and introduced them my name and said I'm teaching. And I asked everybody if they had any yoga experience. And he said, yeah, oh yeah, he's done several yoga classes over the years. I said, okay, great. So we're getting started, and he's got his shoes and his socks on. And I'm not talking like light little shoes, like something pretty flat. I'm talking like big old gym runners. And he's wearing these big old gym runners in his socks. And so I just announced to the whole group, we need to take our shoes off so that we can actually feel the ground. This will be easier for balancing. Plus, it's going to help improve our ankle strength and blah, blah, blah. Who knows what I said? This was so many years ago. And no change. And so I was like, if he would at least take the shoes off, maybe the socks, if he got off of it, if his mat was sticky enough, I don't know. But yeah, I mentioned it a couple more times, just to the whole group, didn't take his shoes off. And then as we got started in the practice, I had just said, I'm going to walk around the room and just help a few people. And I just went up to him individually, didn't make him a spotlight or anything, but just kind of whispered to him, can I get you to take your shoes off? And he said, do I have to? And I said, well, no, but you're missing a lot of the benefits, like for your feet, if your shoes are on. And I went back up to my mat and he left. That was that. That was the very first time that somebody walked out of my yoga class. I also used to teach at a gym. And although the class was, this is long before my yin days, long before I had all this yin in me, the class that was being taught was called Strength and Stamina. So if the name doesn't tell you already what that class was like, there was also a very clear description how this was not a beginner-friendly class and that people attending shouldn't have major injuries, that they should be able-bodied, that this was an intermediate level class. And maybe senior, but not quite elderly yet, lady came in who definitely was not, the class was not appropriate for her. I, just continued with the class and tried to modify as best I could, but very few minutes in, it became very clear to everybody, herself included, that this was not the class for her, and she just left. I'm telling you all of these because it's happened to me 4 times. I've been teaching yoga for 20 years, and I have had 4 walkouts. The other one that I had was somebody who came to the studio and came to the yin class. I think it was a yin class. It might have been a restorative class. I'm not sure. Either way, partway through, she got up and she told me, though, she addressed it. Like, it was like we were in the maybe first quarter of the class, not even. We were still doing grounding and centering. And she just said, you know what? I thought this is really what I needed today, but it just isn't. I'm going to go. I think I need a more active class. And I was like, okay, like no biggie. And then it happened just the other day. I was teaching. We had done our check-in, which I do in every class. A little meet and greet where everybody says hello. And it's just literally their name and how they're doing. And then I had gotten people onto their back, and we were doing constructive rest, and I was guiding them through some mindfulness. And then somebody just got up and left. So I'm telling you this, dear teacher, first of all, so that you know that pretty much every teacher I've ever talked to has had someone leave during their class. Now, how this came up how it was in the list in my phone before I decided to share it today, because it's kind of fresh in my mind, is because somebody in the Yin Yoga Network group had posted a little ranty poo, we'll say, a little ranty poo, about the fact that somebody left her Yin Yoga with Nidra class during Yoga Nidra, and how essentially annoyed she was with that, or unimpressed or pissed, or whatever the word was. She didn't say she was angry, but it was very clear from the ensuing comments later that she was angry about it. basically she came in and said, this is what happened. And she didn't say, I need support, or has this ever happened to you? Or what do you as teachers do when this happens? Or why did this happen? What did I do wrong? It wasn't anything like that. It was all complete indignation. Am I saying that right? Indignation with the fact that this woman had the nerve to leave partway through Yoga Nidra. And that when she approached the student who was getting ready to leave, the student had told her she was cold and that she didn't think this was a valid reason to interrupt everyone else's Yoga Nidra experience by leaving the room. Okay. So needless to say, in the comments, she got some probably unintended feedback. And that's what we'll go into today. So, dear yoga teacher, if somebody has ever left your classroom, that has nothing to do with you. I'm going to say that at least 2 more times. Dear yoga teacher, if somebody leaves your classroom, that has nothing to do with you. 1 more time for the people in the cheap seats. Dear yoga teacher, if somebody leaves your classroom, that has nothing to do with you. And it has everything to do with what's going on with them personally, that day, that moment in time. Sometimes somebody leaving your classroom is them practicing self-care. Whatever it is that's coming up for them, they're not ready to deal with. Or maybe they've realized that this actually just isn't the kind of class for them. And in case you didn't know it, dear yoga teacher, you are not for everyone. You are not for everyone. I'm not for everyone. That's for damn sure. You are not for everyone. Not everybody will love your classes. And that is okay. Because there's a lot of yoga teachers out there. There's a lot of yoga classes out there. They certainly do not need to all be taught by you. You don't need to have everybody in the room madly in love with your class. In fact, that would be impossible because everyone has different needs and goals and expectations in that room. And if what you're offering doesn't fit with their needs, goals, or expectations, or where they're at that day, then it's okay if they leave. So the other thing I want to mention is I have never walked out of a yoga class, but oh man, have I been close. Oh, there's been so many times. And the only reason that I haven't done it is for the feelings of the teacher. I remember the last time I was back in Calgary, which is where I'm from, visiting friends and family. I decided to go to my old favorite yoga studio and my old favorite time slot. There used to be a Saturday, I don't know if it's still there, a Saturday 4:30 yin yoga practice, which I loved. I mostly loved it because of the teacher who no longer teaches there, no longer teaches yoga at all, unfortunately, which I respect and honor her choice, but also my heart breaks a little because she was a fantastic teacher. Anywho, so she no longer teaches it. But anyway, I thought it's a Saturday at 4:30. The reason I used to love that class so much is because, number one, I used to teach on Saturdays. So I taught on Saturday mornings, 9, a 9 till 10:15, and then a 10:30 to 12 kind of thing. And then I would have some lunch, and I would typically, not always though, but often do some work. And then by 4:30, I'd be like, that's enough work. And so I loved going to that class, meeting a friend perhaps, and we would do that yin class together. It was a warm yin, not because the teacher wanted the room warm, but just because the class before it was a warm class. And so the room, despite the fact that the heat was now off, was still warm. It was a warm yin class. And you were done by, I think, 6 or quarter to 6. And so it was a lovely time because it was the end of my work day. I could meet with a friend and we would do our warm yin practice with my awesome teacher who was incredibly grounding and just a fairly fantastic facilitator and space holder. Not at all afraid to get into the shadowy bits, which is what I loved about it. And then I would go across the street to my favorite little sushi place. If anyone in Calgary is listening, it was Hannah Sushi. I hope it's still there. And so I would often do this either for myself or with a friend. I would work during the day and then I'd say, oh, you want to hang out on Saturday? Cool. Do you want to go to this yoga class and then go for sushi? And then we'll over tea or whatever. And so it was at least a once a month, if not twice a month routine of mine. So I thought when I was visiting Calgary, and this was post pandemic, and so I was really nervous actually to go back home and just to see like which of my favorite businesses made it through this insanity and which ones did not. And so I was grateful that the studio was still open. They still had a 4:30 yin class, and I was stoked. I was excited. So I signed up for the class. Now I'm kind of a back of the class kid. Some of you, if you have been around my orbit for a while, that's probably not going to surprise you. So I always like to tuck in the back corner as far in the back room as possible if it's a public class. If it's a teacher training or something, I'm second row front and center because I need to hear and see everything. But if it's just a public yoga class, I usually tuck in the back so I can hide, have plenty of space, be incognito, not have too many people around me. And so I had done that. And let me just tell you that this class was anything but yin. There was a few yin poses thrown in there, but in between each yin pose, she was not allowing for a rebound. She was doing so many counter poses, and a lot of them were like little flowy things. So really the class should have been called a yin yang class. Now, had I known it was a yin yang class from the description, I could have just decided, am I up for that today? Okay, or not. But to think that it's going to be a straight up yin class, show up and start practicing, and then find out it's a yin yang class where we're suddenly doing downward dogs and planks, and I'm like, wait, what the hell is going on here? So needless to say, I definitely, by about pose 3, wanted to walk out of that classroom. And the only reason I didn't is because I'm a teacher and I work with teachers and I mentor teachers, and I know how sensitive teachers are and how much we're helping, healing people. And that despite, no matter how confident somebody is, somebody getting up and walking out of their class is going to shook them a little. It might just be a minor shake, like what happened to me with the most recent one, where I saw her go. I sent her love and light. We'll talk about that in a moment. Not verbally, just energetically. And I continued on with my teaching, and I didn't skip much of a beat. I'll tell you how that was possible as we go in. But I didn't know this teacher, and I didn't know. Could somebody walking out partway through her class, a quarter through her class, cause her to, kind of lose her footing for the rest of the class? And because I was all the way in the back, there was no way for me to just slip out like I was going to go to the washroom and never return, because I would have had to walk through the whole, and it was a busy big room. I would have had to walk through all the people with my stuff, like with my water bottle and all my stuff. So it would have been very obvious, and it would have been perhaps a bit of a spectacle. And so despite the fact that I did not like that class, and it was not what I signed up for and not what I wanted, I stayed anyway. And that was that. So I've been to many classes where I've wanted to walk out. Another example I can think of not long ago was a colleague doing a yin and myofascial release workshop. And about 4 minutes in, started getting political. And I was like, excuse me? What are you doing? Why are we suddenly talking about politics in the middle of a sacred space? I would have loved to have walked out. Once again, I did not, because I was already again off in the back corner, and it was a colleague. And so I just grit my teeth and made the mental note that I will never return to one of her classes. Same as the other girl. This experience was not what I was hoping for, so I won't be coming back. But our students are not teachers, and they maybe don't have, for example, just the wherewithal mentally and emotionally to kind of stay present with whatever discomfort might be coming up for them. So there's so many reasons why people walk out of classes. One might be trauma. It could be that whatever especially in a yin with the still and the quiet, that, maybe some stuff's coming up. They're feeling really restless, or they have perhaps some PTSD, and they are not in a place where they are feeling resourced enough. That's the word I was looking for. Resourced enough that they can stay and be present with it and work with it through the class. I, as a yoga teacher, I can do that with these classes. So if I go and I'm not loving the class, or it's not what I wanted, or something comes up in the, the rant of the teacher that I wish wasn't there, I am resourced enough to go, okay, let's try to let that just be over here. And I'm going to continue with my practice. And just note that I won't be going to that class again. But not all our students are resourced enough to do that. So it could be that something's come up for them mentally or emotionally. Maybe they're in a vulnerable place in their life and your words were kind of sparking an emotion, and maybe they're not quite ready to process that emotion. And so they flee. And there is a reason why it's called fight, flight, or freeze. They flee. Maybe it's just that they actually didn't even read the class description and they just showed up for a class that is totally not their vibe. Totally possible. So these are the situations where it might be just what the student is experiencing, right? Trauma, perhaps, mental, emotional stuff coming up that they're not prepared to deal with. Sometimes something physical comes up and they don't need to tell you. Like, what if someone's got IBS and all of a sudden, partway through your class, they're like, oh shit, pun intended. That could be a thing. Or their bladder. Or, I mean, we don't know. We don't know what's going on with people. There's plenty of reasons why somebody might have to get up and remove themselves from your class. And let me tell you, dear teacher, very few of them have anything to do with you, and it has mostly everything to do with them. And that also, if that is what they need for their own self-care, that is what they should do. If the student cannot stay resourced, grounded in your class because something else is going on mentally, emotionally, physically, then they should feel like they have the right to go, right? Like, these are grown-ass adults who paid to be there. They should have agency over their choice as to whether or not they should stay in the room and when and how long that should be. And this expectation of this teacher that had posted in the group that somehow she was the boss and that this student could only leave under certain circumstances and at certain times. Oh man, like I said, she got some feedback in the comments that perhaps she was not prepared for. So for example, how can you hold a trauma-informed space and then get in a snit because a student leaves? And is it ideal that a student leaves right during the quietest part of class? No, it's not ideal. But it's also not the end of the world. And you know what? Other people are in a public yoga class. You can expect things to happen that are a little less than ideal in a public yoga class because you're practicing yoga with other humans. People might get up and go to the washroom. People might get up and leave the room. People might fart. People might stink. People might make lots of noises when they practice. All of these things happen in yoga classes. And if you're studying at a studio with a teacher and you're taking public yoga classes, you just got to suck it up for some of that. If you don't want any of that, practice yoga at home by yourself. So I think that this teacher, first of all, over exaggerated in her own mind, her own authority, because she is not the boss of that student. She does not get to decide when and how that student decides to practice. We can hope that our students won't decide to use the washroom right before Shavasana, but it happens all the time. We could hope that somebody wouldn't get up partway through Yoga Nidra and leave the room, but it could happen. And this snit that this teacher had got in, again, she was making it all about her. She thought she was making it about her students, but I will bet you anything her students were far less disturbed and disrupted by this than she was. It was almost like she had this sense of the nerve of this woman leaving class. Let's just get into the fact that she actually went up to her and inquired, which I would not do. We'll talk about what I do when people leave the class in a moment. But I would not go up to somebody who's getting up to leave and be like, why are you leaving? Or is everything okay? Or no, none of that. So the fact that she even went up and talked to her crosses a line to me. And then she refused to accept the woman's reason, which was that she was cold. And maybe she was cold. We don't know. Maybe that degree of cold was that uncomfortable for her that she decided, I'm not enjoying this, so I'm going to go. If it was just that she was cold and nothing else was going on there. Well, it's unfortunate that she didn't just add another blanket and stay, because that would be a little disruptive to the rest of the group, but it's not the end of the world. It's one yoga nidra practice in one yoga class. However, the I'm cold could have just been what she could quickly come up with, because she didn't really want to tell you why she was leaving, which is I'm anxious, or I'm scared, or I'm grieving, or 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 a million other things, right? Mental, emotional, physical. Who knows? She could have IBS. Maybe she's just saying I'm cold because it's less embarrassing than saying I'm about to shit my pants. So, dear yoga teacher, I know that we're sensitive beings, but please quit taking this so personally. Somebody leaves your room, it's because they needed to leave. Let them go. With grace and love, let them go. Don't go up to them. Don't try to convince them to stay. Whatever's going on in the room at that time is not for them. And that is okay, because they will find another yoga class at a different time, or another teacher, or maybe they'll come back to your class at a time where they're more resourced and they will love every minute of it. But maybe that isn't happening right then and there in that time. So you are not a therapist. You cannot check in and see if everybody's okay. You have a group to lead. And when one person decides to remove themselves from the group because they're listening to their own needs, you are still responsible for that group. And you are still responsible for the grounding that you now need to bring back into yourself, because you just watched someone get up and leave. And no matter how long you've been teaching, even if it's just for a moment, like it was for me, it was like a 2-moment thing where I was like, well, that doesn't happen very often. Was it something I said? That happened. But then I let it go because I had a group to lead. And I just had to assume that that student was doing what she needed to do for herself, for her own needs, for her own well-being, for her own self-care. That for whatever reason, my class or the style of the class, or me, I don't know which, wasn't right for her right then. And that is okay. So first of all, don't take it personally. Every teacher's had people walk out. It's not that unusual. Now, like I said, in 20 years, it's happened 4 times, but that's just 4 people that did walk out. I don't know how many people might have wanted to. I have no way to know that. So that's just something you need to know, is that even if you were guiding a really skillful, really soulful, really well thought out class, even if you're being trauma informed and all of these things, there might be people there who it's just not the right class for them on the right day, because of mental, emotional stuff, energetic stuff, physical stuff. Who knows? The woman could have just been like, oh my God, I forgot to plug the parking meter. And if I come home with one more ticket, my husband's going to lose his shit. We don't know. We don't know what that woman was going through. We don't know what the woman that left my room was going through. Now, I'm pretty sure with the first guy, I know he obviously didn't want to take his shoes off. So, and I don't know why. Maybe he has something going on with his feet. Again, I didn't tell him to take socks off, just his shoes, because because of that, I thought, well, maybe he's self-conscious of his feet. If I can just get the shoes off, that's enough. But he left. So it could just be that he has something going on with his feet. Maybe he's embarrassed or ashamed of something to do with his feet. That's possible. Or maybe he just doesn't like people asking him what to do, telling him or asking him what to do. Maybe the fact that, some young female came up to him and said, can I get you to take your shoes off? Triggered him in some way. Maybe. I don't know. I'll never know. But it doesn't matter. He did what he needed to do at the time, and I continued on with the class. So there's that. Now, I will say that I almost never have somebody leave the room nowadays in my registered series, because I actually know all of these students. They know me, I know them, I get to know them. And so there's a different level there of care that I can offer, but also of me seeing them and reading kind of where they're at. And they also feel safer because I tell them all the time, I don't care if you do the sequence that I have chosen. I do not care if you just come here and you lay on your mat and you sleep. I don't care if you do heart bed and don't ever leave it for the whole class. If you feel like you are going to be getting a benefit by showing up here today, with me, with us, the group, even if you don't do the exact practice, then please come, right? So my students also know that I'm not going to try to convince them to do anything. I'm not going to try to force them to do anything. I'm not going to be upset if they choose to opt out of a pose or two or the whole practice and have a nap. All of that's fine by me. So it doesn't happen in my registered series that people get up and leave or drop off on the Zoom. But once in a while in a drop-in class where I'm just getting random people off the street that may or may not have ever practiced with me, it's a possibility. And I have to allow for the fact and trust the fact that if somebody leaves the room, that they're doing what they need to do to take care of themselves that day, and that they should have agency and permission to do so. Okay, so let's talk, that's talking about like what might be going on for them. But let's talk about what goes on for us as a teacher when someone gets up and leaves. Well, first of all, if you already suffer from imposter syndrome or low self-esteem, you're going to take that shit personally. And I'm going to say it one more time, my friends, that has almost nothing to do with you. Almost nothing to do with you. It's just that whatever you're offering, the style of yoga, the pace, whatever is coming up for them, they can't deal with it right then and there. They got to go. They got to go take care of themselves, and that is okay. So very little does it have anything to do with you. Now, sometimes it could be prevented by students actually reading class descriptions. I mean, that could be a thing. Like one of the ones that, left and, did address it with me when she left, when she said, I just realized this isn't the class style for me, for where I'm at right now. Had she read the class description where it said still, quiet, long holds, meditative stillness, et cetera, she might have realized that beforehand. But she didn't. And so that's that. Now, I would also say, though, here's where studios and teachers do have to take some responsibility. So where I had said that I was in that class that was said to be a yin class, and then there was all kinds of downward doggy, planky situations in between yin poses, that could have been better addressed in the class description. So either that teacher doesn't actually have yin training. That could be one thing. Number two, or it could be maybe she's got yin training, but she personally herself does not enjoy a 100% yin class. And so that's why she likes to mix it up. Or it could be that she was just subbing or filling in temporarily for the regular teacher who does teach that. I don't know. But if that is her regular, let's just assume it's her regular time slot. She always teaches that class. That could be cleared up in the description of the class. If it said, this is a yin yang class, you will be doing some yin poses intermixed with movement. Very clear, right? Oh, okay, we're going to have some stunless, we're going to have some movement. I probably wouldn't have gone to the class had I known, because I was really hoping for that straight up yinness that I used to get at that time slot. So that could have been fixed just with a better class description. Yeah. I think also when it comes to politics, and I realize that this is going to get me all kinds of trouble, but I think if you are going to be discussing politics in your classes, you need to say that somewhere. Because for a lot of people, they come to yoga because it's their one reprieve from the world. It is their one place where they get to just be and heal and ground so that they can go back out into the world, which is always talking about politics anyway. So if you are a teacher who's like, I'm a social justice warrior, yoga is social justice, I'm going to bring this into all my classes, make sure that's in your description, that you weave in themes of social justice, of politics, of whatever, so that people can decide to opt in or out of that. It can be very triggering. And I'm using triggering in the actual way, not in the millennial, I'm offended because you said something I didn't like way, but in the actual PTSD way. It can be triggering for people to show up and all of a sudden have these intense subject matters discussed when that's not what they came for. So it would have been good to just denote that in your classes. If that's you as a teacher, if you're a really political teacher, then just make sure you mention that somewhere so people can choose to be in that space with that or not. Because, a lot of us get enough of that everywhere else. It's on the social medias, it's on the media, especially right at the time of this recording, which by the time you listen to it, it will be over. But I'm in Canada and we're expecting an election. So like politics is everywhere. It's at the dinner table, it's with your friends, it's on the signs on the road, it's everywhere. And so for a lot of people, the yoga class is their only reprieve from that. So I would say, if you are a political style teacher, just give people that as a heads up in your class description, that you will be discussing these kinds of themes. So people can decide, do I want to be there for that or not? So those are the only two examples I can think of where maybe, a better class description might result in less people leaving or less people wanting to leave. But if the class style, like if it's a yin class and someone just isn't resourced enough for an inward practice, for introspection, for a yin experience, if they're just not in a place in their life where they can address that, then they should go, if that's what they need to do for them. And I, as the teacher, should not be offended by them. I should understand that that person is doing what they need to do for themselves, and that it has nothing to do with me or irritating the other students, and everything to do with them having agency to take care of themselves. And I have to honor and respect that. Now, if I was in a class every week, like a registered series or a regular student that always left during Nidra every week, then I might address it with them and say, hey, yoga Nidra is not for everybody, but if you don't want to, if you don't want to do the Nidra, can you just leave before we start? If it happened repeatedly, I might take that student inside and say, hey, you can totally go, whatever, but it might be less disruptive to the group if you left before we get into yoga Nidra. I could give you a cue or a code word if you'd like as to when we're going to start. Now, that's only if the person did it repeatedly, right? Then you knew this student. That would probably not happen though, because somebody typically who isn't ready or comfortable enough to do a Nidra practice, which is also a still, quiet, very introspective experience. So if whatever's going on for them in their lives, whether it be mentally, emotionally, physically, even if that practice isn't a good fit for them, they're not likely going to come back to your class if they left partway through, right? So that's what I want to say about all of that stuff. Now, what do you do as a teacher? Well, first of all, you have to not take it personally. And I know that that's hard for some of you, harder than others, but you just have to pause in that moment when you feel like you're now being triggered and say, okay, just left, or he just left. You take this if you'd like. That has nothing to do with me. That has nothing to do with me personally, as a human, as a teacher, and everything to do with where they're at and their needs right now in this moment. So you could say that to yourself. This has nothing to do with me as a person, as a teacher, and everything to do with them honoring their needs in this moment, right? I want my students to honor their needs. That's part of what I'm trying to teach them as a yoga teacher. And then you continue on with the class. So you have to just not take it personally, because it's not about you. And I realize that for some of us that maybe are more confident in our teaching or more experienced or just a more confident person in general, that is easier to say than for others who maybe are a bit more sensitive or a bit more highly critical, or a newer teacher, or who think that everything should be perfect for everyone all the time. So if that's you, I understand that this is going to be more of a challenge, but maybe you could take that phrase and tuck it in your back pocket, that this has nothing to do with me and my class. It has everything to do with that person honoring their needs right now in this moment. And then the other thing that I do, so I might feel a little spark of indignation or irritation or confusion or something when that student gets up to leave. Of course, I'm human. That little ember is going to kind of start. But because I've spent many years meditating, I can observe that thought and that emotion, and I can go, okay, I see you. But actually, what we're going to bring in instead is that person just did what they needed for themselves in this moment. And then what I do as a teacher If I'm not speaking literally right as it happens, I will put one hand on my heart and I will mentally send them loving kindness. If I can't stop, what I'm doing because I'm mid-sentence, I will still pause and do it in my mind. May you be well. May you be content. May you be at peace. May you be free. So loving and metta as they leave, wishing them well on their path, not taking it personally because it actually has nothing to do with me personally and everything to do with just where they're at that day. Maybe I am a good teacher for them in the future or have been in the past. And for whatever they're going through in that moment, I'm not. Or maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm just not the teacher. I'm not for everybody. Neither are you, dear yoga teacher. Nobody is for everybody, which is great because there's so many yoga teachers out there, so many students. It doesn't matter. So maybe you're not the teacher for them. If so, wish them well, send them love, send them on their way. Or maybe you might be the teacher for them in the past or the future, but just in that moment, it's not a fit because whatever they're going through in their own personal journey. And then finally, maybe it's just the style of yoga isn't for them, at least at that point in their life, right? Not everybody is ready to sit in the still and quiet and look at the shit that comes up. And so if they're in your yin class and they leave, it could be that. Or it could literally just be that some shit's coming up. We don't know. We don't know why people leave. It could be mental, emotional, physical. It doesn't matter. All of them are nothing to do with you. Totally not your fault. Does not mean you're a shitty teacher. Doesn't mean that your class sucks. It just means that person is taking care of their own needs. And so can we, hands on heart, whether it's physically or mentally, send them a little bit of well wishes on their way out for their journey, and then come back to the group that is still there that you need to serve and to lead. All right, my friends, I think that's enough rambling about that. I hope that you found this helpful. If you are on Spotify or on YouTube, I would love to know in the comments, or if you're even on my own blog where these are embedded, if there's a place to comment. I want to hear your comments about, have you had a student leave? How'd you feel? What'd you do about that? How often has it happened? Etc. Now, if somebody's leaving your class all the time, like if every week that you're teaching someone's leaving, there is something awry there, either with your teaching or maybe just the class description and expectations of what to expect in the class. If it's happening all the time, then maybe we do need to look at, is there something I could be doing differently, or is the class not described properly? But if just every once in a while someone leaves your class, they're just taking care of themselves. Bless them and send them on their way. Okay, my friends, I hope you found that helpful. Please let me know in the comments if this was helpful, if you've had someone leave and it really shook you, or if you've had people leave, what you do about it, how you feel about it. I'd love to know. And until we meet again, bye for now.